Oh, so for the third time, I'm gonna start this over.
Third time is the charm.
Or this is going to be the charm, or I'm going to fucking smash something.
It's all good.
Welcome to the Social Priority Podcast on Star Panda TV. I'm Star Panda, and today our discussion takes us through TERF logic. But first, let me introduce two lovely feminist political streamers, Rhya and Aislene, the Feminist Critique.
Hi.
Hello.
So how was your week? Let's start on that.
It was pretty decent, you know.
Yeah, long and busy. I'm working 4 10s this week, and
Jesus
I'm only
Christ.
on number 2.
That's too much work.
Sure.
So, how did the both of you two get started streaming together?
It's a
Well-
bit of a long story. But we met about 12 years ago on Gaia Online. We used to do like text-based role play, and then like our friendship kind of grew into more like I got to go and visit Rhya. And then I got into Outlander and I was like, hey, you got to read this. And because of that and the TV show, we started into that like fandom, started a podcast, had a Tumblr, like 20,000 people. We were
Never
famous.
gonna be that famous again, ever.
Yeah, ever again. And and then like Rhya came up with, this great idea about a year after the Outlander thing, and I'll let her explain that a bit more.
Yeah, so after we kind of fell out of the Outlander fandom, we were trying to figure out, well, what do we want to do? Because we really did enjoy podcasting, but we weren't exactly sure where to do it. We had done like a haunted history podcast, a couple of episodes of that, did an anime watch podcast because I've never watched anime, and Ashley was like, hey, what if you watch the first 3 episodes of an anime and tell me what you think? And then finally we
Wait.
decided.
What anime was it?
Oh, well, one of the ones that we watched the first 3 episodes of was Vampire Night. That's the one I remember.
Oh, I
Yeah.
haven't seen that one.
Don't. It's
Don't
terrible.
recommend it.
That's specifically the reason why I got Rhya to watch it, because I passionately hate Vampire Night, the manga plus the anime. Terrible and wild. That's all I'm gonna say.
Sorry to the Kaname and Zero fans.
No comment.
Okay, so you were saying that you got started watching anime and doing an anime podcast.
Yeah, we did that for a few episodes, but it wasn't really the right fit. And then finally, I was listening to the Cracked Movie podcast, which didn't really last at all long because it was like right after that podcast that Cracked got sold to a corporation that slashed their staff.
Jeez.
Fun. But I really like the concept. And so we knew that the Bechdel cast existed back then. So we kind of were like, well, what if we did more than the Bechdel cast? So we had all of these different tests about intersectionality and feminism and stuff like that. And we were applying it to movies. And like our whole tagline was, is the movie feminist? Better, is the movie good? Right? Like, even if it's not a feminist film, is it still enjoyable? That kind of thing. We did that for about 2.5 years, and then at that point I was watching a lot of Twitch, and I was really interested in political Twitch because like I didn't know that you could live stream and talk politics on, and so I came to Aislene and I was like, what if we started doing this?
And I was like, that's dumb. No, let's not do that and say we did.
And then we did it. Aislene was like, wow, people actually want to see us talk about this. And I was like, yeah, isn't that nifty? And so now we've been doing it for a little over 2 years. So,
True. Listen,
we don't do the
I
movie podcast
just
anymore.
yeah, we dropped the movie podcast. We had started another movie podcast right before, because it was, like, an idea that I came up with, and it was, like, a good idea, but we were not nearly famous enough to do it.
Yeah. We
So it
finally
went
got our
nowhere.
Disney one.
I
Yeah.
would probably say you're not focused enough to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
The
But
problem is we don't like editing, so
Makes
it's
sense.
just
true.
yeah.
It's true. So yeah, that's how we came to start streaming, was just like us wanting to do something in the media but not knowing exactly what. And I feel like through our journey, Twitch has definitely been the best thing for us.
Mhm.
Um we've been able to like really create a wonderful community. Like our mods and our fans are super great. I love them so much. Like our chatters are the coolest. So
True.
That sounds great.
yeah.
Uh, so on the feminist angle, what made it an important issue to you?
Aislene, you want to go first?
Yeah, I kinda, like, got into it about, like, a little under a decade ago, because like, before, I didn't really think about it. It wasn't really, like I don't know, I was at the time, I was, like, in the military, and I was, like, kind of an asshole. So, um but then I, like, ended up reading something, especially with the Gamergate stuff, and I was like, "Oh, hey, like, this is kind of a big deal," and, like, started reading more about it and watching videos and stuff, right? And then, um, I just kinda, like, grew from there, like, really started off with, like, white lib shit, but, it kind of, like, grew from there, especially with, like, how much has happened in the last, like 6 years, 7 years. And I would say like our feminism has really become much more intersectional.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was I grew up in a southern, extremely conservative evangelical household. And so I was when I was in high school, I ended up meeting people who were queer and atheists, and that was kind of like a starting point for me, but I don't think I actually started really looking at myself as a feminist until Aislene and I were having discussions about it. And I was like, oh, yeah, because I definitely went through a not like other girls phase. And I also had to unlearn a lot of the shit that I had been taught when I was a child. And of course, that takes time. And then I again went through that white lib phase. Save me. Um, and then, like, I think it was 2016, when I was like, "Oh, yeah, fuck yeah, sock dem, Bernie Sanders," like, "Yes, I believe in all these things," and, like, the feminism just was, like, very important to me in that election, and I remember being so angry at Gloria Steinem for saying that the only reason women supported Bernie Sanders was because where the boys were, because at the time, I was still pretty liberal and, like, "Oh, Gloria Steinem, icon of feminism," and I was like, this is
How
messed
dare
up.
you?
Yeah, I was so betrayed. But,
Yeah, it was her and Madeline Albright that were
yeah,
like that really went into that sort of thing. And it's
yeah.
like, well, one's a war criminal, so
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, like from like 2016 onward, I really started my entire trajectory of politics really started to change, and I really definitely started reading feminist theory and really kind of focusing in and honing in on like what feminism actually is and intersectionality and revolutionary feminism. So that's where I am now. And I am no longer a sockdom.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you gotta start somewhere with the
Mhm.
Mhm.
liberal white kind of feminism.
Uh,
I feel like a lot of people haven't grown out of that phase though.
I
So
agree.
especially the
I-
topic of today's conversation.
Yeah.
And I like the other thing too, especially with feminism, like right now the most like I mean we're gonna get more into it, but right now the most pivotal I can't even say the word
Pivotal.
yeah, like thing about feminism is like the attack on trans people. And it's like it's just vile and disgusting, and it's like that complete logic like takes so much away from like what feminism is, that it's just like almost like ripped apart and like mutated into something that is more right wing, and it drives me wild.
So with that, we can probably go right into the topic. So what angle do you two want to come at this with?
Well, I think it's fair to say fuck TERFs. We could start there.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that really irritates me about TERFs and gender critical people in general is a lot of the time their focus of what is a woman ends up being very gender essentialist. Because a lot of the points that they'll say is, oh, well, you're not a real woman because you can't have children. Well, there are cis women who can't have children.
Mhm.
Well, you're not a real woman because, you don't have a uterus. And it's like some cis women don't have uteruses because of hysterectomies or, perhaps, like other things like, like this idea that like it's all put down to like your bone structure and the organs you have and the genitals you have is such a weird thing. And it really plays into eugenics in my opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
um and also it ends up being really fat phobic and really racist,
Yeah.
because a lot of the times like when you talk about like bone structure, a lot of TERFs will talk about how black cis women will have like a more manly bone structure, and it's just like, really? Like, do you not realize what you're doing by being this? It's just very
And
frustrating.
they've gotten to a point where like they'll say like tall women are not actually women because they're tall, and it's like there's just like so many
Very body
like
shaming.
well yeah, like a lot of body shame that like comes into this into the whole structure of like this ideal sense of beauty, and yet with like the feminism that that I guess they grew up with, like second wave, in lot of cases, it was like, oh well, we're against beauty pageants and all of that sort of shit, right? But now they've like kind of reverted into this like ideal of like womanhood, and it's like
Specifically Western standards, I believe. Like Western
exactly.
white women standard of beauty is what every woman is supposed to aspire to. And if you don't show enough femininity in your appearance by nature of you just being a person, then you are not womanly enough. And like it just drives me up the wall that TERFs literally can't see that they're actively harming themselves while harming trans people. Like, you're literally not doing yourself any favors. What was it? There was an app a few years ago where like only cis women could join based on the bone structure of their face or whatever, and like so many cis women who were TERFs tried to join the website, but they were rejected because their features weren't considered quote womanly or quote feminine enough.
I think
And
I
it's like,
remember that, yeah.
yeah, it's like, so you see that this is actively harming you as much as it is like trans people. Like, trans women are not out to get you. Trans women aren't here to replace you, right? They're just as harmed by patriarchy as you are. You know, they're actually more likely to be assaulted. They're more likely to be, you know, like,
And
harmed.
and specifically, like, trans women of color
Mhm.
are the ones that, like, are getting assaulted, more so, as well as, uh,
Killed.
you know yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
it's just very
Um.
dangerous.
So I guess with that, um, it does seem like uh they are going after like um I guess they're trying to reverse engineer a reason a woman is what she is
Mhm.
in a way that like is not a trans woman, you know? Um
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, like correct me if I'm wrong, but like everything that they try to describe is literally like um to be exclusive to trans or exclusive from trans women, but
Mhm.
then like inadvertently excludes a ton of women who also fit those categories.
Yeah.
Um,
It's really like Nazi shit. That's
yeah,
what it is, in the grand scheme of things.
and like
Yeah.
with the bone structure type of thing, that just harkens back to like skull shape and all that, and
Chronology, yeah.
Chronology,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
it's
like,
go ahead.
yeah, it's like you're being very regressive. I just don't understand the logic. Like, your only logic is you hate trans people, and so your focus is you're defying your own logic by your own hatred, right? Like, hatred never makes sense when you actively think about it. Bigotry never makes sense on any real level. It's just that people have decided to treat you like an outsider, and they're trying to find ways to justify that. But while justifying it, they end up harming themselves, right? We talk very similarly about patriarchy as example, right? Like, when we talk about things like toxic masculinity, when we talk about patriarchy, like, these things actively harm men too. Like, it's not just
Right,
women that are harmed by patriarchy, it's men. Men are also harmed by patriarchy. But when they hear the word patriarchy, or they hear words like toxic masculinity, they assume that that thing is meant to and and so they refuse to acknowledge the fact that the thing that they're participating in is actively harming them, like this idea of, you know, boys will be boys and men can't cry. Like, that's patriarchy forming itself and fixing you to a certain type of mold that maybe you don't fit in, and you don't want to fit in, but because of patriarchy you have no choice to. But you don't see it as you being victimized by it, you see women as like the enemy. So it's very similar in its logic. It doesn't make any sense, but it's just a justification for hatred because you just want to lash out at someone.
And it's like also when we think of, the like kind of harpening back to the like phrenology or like bone structure, right? Like another group that talks about that frequently are incels,
Mhm.
about themselves because
mm-hmm.
they're not masculine enough or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And it's like that again is very, in the frame of like eugenics, and like
Yeah.
I know, hot take, but eugenics is bad? Like, you know, like,
Oh wow.
n
That's too much spice. What are
yeah,
you going to do?
but, like, yeah, so it just,
Yeah,
so
cuz this
that's really where the logic is, like, there is no logic
yeah. Yeah, bigotry doesn't have any real logic to it. It's just you trying to make logic out of something that is nonsensical. Like,
to exclude other people.
Exactly, right? Like, if you put down on paper, you know, hey, I hate these people because, you know, they have a different skin color than me. Like, what about it makes it different, right? It's you having to justify what is an idiotic statement in order to make yourself feel better about why you hate this person. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and try to stick with uh physical attributes for now that they think a woman is. We'll go into social a little bit later, but
Yeah.
for now, I want to go into like their arguments on biology and genetics and all that. Um, so we talked about bone structure.
Mhm.
First of all, with bone structure, there are so many variables that you could point to that affects bone structure, either um, like before puberty or even after puberty. Like when I was a kid, I was told to drink a ton of milk because it'll help your bones grow big and strong. I think all of us were if we were born around the 90s.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Got milk.
yeah. So,
Aaron Burr.
and like, if you do like any semblance of research on the effects of estrogen on the body, it definitely does like mess with your bones. Like you are more susceptible to like low calcium. You are your pelvis can actually rotate in certain women. Um like not all cis women will have that pelvis rotation. Some of their pelvises are smaller than other women. Like all of this is so diverse that like limiting it to a specific like angle or like width or whatever is super reductive and not helpful to like even getting any kind of help if you need it from a doctor.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's true.
And
And
it Oh, sorry, go on.
another thing like that TERFs do biologically is they'll like, well, real women have XX chromosomes. Well, there are women that have XXY chromosomes, like cis women. And so like it's just so silly. I know I keep repeating that, but it is like when you think about it, it's oh well the science says that this is a real woman, and then you actually go, actually biology is telling you this is completely different. Doesn't really matter, but
And with genetics, like even if you're a woman and you've been told you're a woman all your life, like you can find out that you had XY chromosomes and like like it's not just those chromosomes that matter to you being a woman or not, you know? Like
Yeah.
we've learned so much and like they want to take us back to our like high school learning of genetics, but
Yeah.
like there are so many different like variables to biology and genetics and all that, and like it's not helpful to any kind of scientific field, especially if like there was another video on if you've seen SciShow, um there was an episode where they talked about like how in the animal world there's so many different like ways of judging sex in animals. Like there's like I think it was a ZW uh genetic code, something like that, and it's so complicated that like
Yeah.
just bringing it to X, Y, and XX is like not helpful to understanding all these genetic structures and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are even animals that can change their sex, like their
Right.
entire biological structure, in order to reproduce. I mean, anybody that watches Jurassic Park would know that, like, frogs can literally change from being a male to a female if they can't find a mate and asexually reproduce. Like, it's gen nature is weird.
Yeah, it
Like,
is.
and marking everything down to some duology or some binary is really reductive and not really scientific, like it's not just black and white, there's a shit ton of gray in the middle. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about science. I just know that there is so many different like variables that I've read about but completely have forgotten, but, like, nevertheless, nature is wild and it's all over the place, and there is no way to be like, "No, men are men and females are female." No, they're not. No, they're not. Not even
Like
in science.
it's like I live in South Carolina, and our beaches where our state animal is the loggerhead turtle, right? Turtles get whatever their sex is from how hot sand is. If the sand is cooler, it's gonna be, you know, boy turtles. If it's hotter, then they're female turtles, right? Like, and so you're telling me that, human beings are just one or the other when literally the heat of sand in another animal changes their sex? Like, come on.
And
Come on.
also, we still don't know all of the variables that go into getting a human's sex. Like
Mhm.
Mhm.
there have been also like theories and stuff like that on like maybe a kid gets a hormone wash in the womb,
Mhm.
like uh and that contributes so much to um like how you present after you're born.
Yep.
It's so complicated.
Yep.
um and like I want to talk about like how they say that they can always tell.
Oh
um
god, yeah, that's always a fun one.
Oh my
How
god.
is always my question to them on that. How do you always tell? How do you always know?
Well, they literally, like, they get to that point where they're like, "Well, we always know," and then they're posting up, like, pictures of celebrities and claiming that they're secret trans people, that there's this huge, like, trans conspiracy that, like and it's like, I'm sorry, what
There's
the
one
fuck?
Yeah, there's one account, it's a trans woman who puts up pictures of, like, Sigourney Weaver because Sigourney Weaver looks a lot like her, and
right.
they're like, "Oh, you're telling me that I'm trans with a picture of Sigourney Weaver?" And they're like, "Yes." Like, Sigourney Weaver's a cis woman, what are you like, "We can always tell." Obviously not. Like,
The other thing too is 'cause, there is also a point where they will, and men do this too, like, they'll insult, like, cis women and be like, "Oh, well, you look like you're trans," or whatever, and it's like,
"You look like a
"Who."
man," is
Yeah,
the
and it's
common
like,
one.
first of all, who the fuck cares? Second of all, have you seen trans women? They're, like, fucking gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah, and also there's this, like and it really is harmful to trans people in general
Mhm.
when TERFs are like this because they expect you to fall into a binary, but non-binary people exist, and,
That too.
trans women who, don't have traditional, like, Western femininity are ostracized because they're
Mhm.
not femme passing enough, quote unquote. And it's just like you're really being awful to people who, maybe are perfectly fine looking the way they do, and who, like, I don't care what someone looks like. If someone tells me that they are a man or a woman or non-binary or whatever, and these are their pronouns, like, the respectful thing to do is just say, "Okay, cool," and just go with it, and just be nice and, like, not be a dick. But you can't help yourself apparently. Yeah, sorry.
You're
I
fine.
I'm ranting.
Yeah, the I think the we can always tell type of thing, co- it has different variables to it,
Mhm.
Mhm.
because especially in like a picture that's on the internet, like there are so many factors that change what you might look like in that picture.
Mhm.
Like you can even see it in like Instagram pictures. Like people will manipulate how they like what angle they take their picture at.
Mhm.
They'll manipulate like um I guess like the way that they hold their themselves, like their face,
Mhm.
or like they'll suck in their belly or something like that. there's like so many different ways to manipulate the way you look just by standing there. Um, like also the way you stand and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like that also lends itself to like uh the social aspects, if we want to
Mm-hmm.
segue
Yeah.
into that. Like saying that you can always tell kind of I guess defeats the purpose of makeup.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
like you wear makeup all the time to manipulate the way your face looks to other people. So like saying that you can always tell, just like if you wear makeup, that defeats the whole purpose of why you wear makeup. Because like,
Mm-hmm.
are you wearing makeup because you look too manly? If
Yeah.
that's the case, then like what are you talking about when you
No,
say you can always tell? Go
I
ahead.
was born with eyeliner underneath my eyes, okay? So how and mascara on my eyelashes? Like, how
Yeah,
dare
I have
you?
a perfect complexion. My favorite
Yeah.
thing, this is kind of off topic. My favorite thing is when guys will be like, "Oh, I love this woman," and then show a picture who's of a woman who's wearing like a natural makeup look, and they're like, "I wish all women look like this." And it's like, dude, she's still wearing makeup. Like, just because it's not, flashy colors doesn't mean she's not wearing.
Oh, do you remember that discourse of if you remember the character Aloy from what was it called? Um oh, it was the robot dinosaurs game. Um but they had they said that in the production when they released like some art, that she didn't look pretty enough, and they wound up like the fans of it who like were saying that she was ugly wound up saying uh or not saying, but like fixing, quote unquote, her, and made
Jeez.
her look like a an operator like on the phone, and
Uh-huh.
it was so freaking weird.
I love it because it's like, oh, makeup bad, and then it's like this person who is wearing makeup, this is how you should really look. Like, wipe your face, ladies. And
And it's
y'all
not
are so
just that
silly.
too, because if it's not like you're either wearing too much makeup or, not enough or whatever, right? Because
Oh
there
yeah.
is that like toxicity of like, if you're not wearing any makeup whatsoever, because like both cis and trans women, some don't like wearing makeup, and that's perfectly fine. But you get like this, where it's almost like, well, you're not a real woman unless you're wearing makeup and making yourself look pretty. Like, you look so sick without makeup, and it's like, I'm just here existing? Like
Yeah, I think a lot of it, if I'm gonna be honest, is self-hatred, right?
mm,
Like,
Yeah.
I honestly believe that. Like, I do think there is a small part of these TERFs who just hate themselves in one fashion or another. And so they look at trans women who are glowing and who are perfectly fine with themselves and just like can't stand it. And so they've decided to take up the hill that these women are not real women because so and so says so. And it's
but
just like,
well, I mean, that really, like I agree with you because a lot of people with that self-hatred always try to put down, like, another, group of people, right?
mhm,
And we've seen this, it like with, TERFs and gender
mhm,
critical, but also, like, white women when it
mhm,
comes to, the way that, women of color,
mhm.
Black women and Indigenous women have been treated, and there is almost, like, this unsexing of women of color, in, like, feminist or, women's spaces. So,
Yeah, like,
transphobia also hurts, like, cis women.
yes. Like, one of the things that I really remember from the Obama administration was the amount of jokes about Michelle Obama not being a real woman and being a man. And just like, so you have racism and transphobia working in tandem with each other.
Mhm.
Um, and I know that we're talking a lot about trans women, but trans men are also like unfortunately, very, very, uh, just they really do get the short end of the stick because they have to deal with, people just calling them butch lesbians, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
Um, and also because, like they're not they're dismissed more than anything as just confused cis women. Like that's how trans men are viewed a lot of the time. And I think that the reason trans women end up getting a lot more anger and hatred towards them is because white feminist turfy folks like just want to see themselves as victims, and so they see trans women as men invading their space even though trans women are women, but they refuse to see it that way. You see it especially with, the turf queen herself, JK Rowling, right? The
Hmm.
way
Mhm.
she talks about like trans women is always just, well, I was sexually assaulted and so like penises scare me, and it's like, trans women don't necessarily have a penis? Like
Also, there are a lot of women who have been sexually assaulted that, like, aren't afraid, like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, it's
Like,
just a weird
you're
way to
using
justify your hatred.
well, yeah, like, you're using your sexual assault to justify a hatred of another group, and, like, as somebody who has been sexually assaulted, like, fuck you. Like, fuck you. No.
Yeah. That's always
Like,
like that's
get
one of the
fucked.
main that's always one of the main ones that they go back to, right?
Yeah.
Like when the bathroom bills were becoming super quote unquote popular with Republicans and conservatives here in like North Carolina and South Carolina and stuff. Like the main thing was, well, I don't want a man to come in the bathroom and like rape my child. And it's like, okay, so
Rape is
first of
illegal.
all, yeah,
Yeah.
rape is illegal, and if you're so worried about men sexually assaulting your children, then you should definitely make sure that your male children are not going to the bathroom by themselves. Like, this idea that it's just to protect little girls, like, it turns out that children, regardless of sex, gender, are assaulted at about the same rate when they're younger.
Hmm.
I think it's like 1 in 4 kids, 1 in 4 to 1 in 6. That's doesn't matter. Like there's no spectrum of gender. It's literally just 1 in 4 to 1 in 6 children. And so, and most of the time, the person who is being assaulted by a family member or a close personal friend. It's this stranger danger shit. But
Mm.
really, I think it honestly came from like the 80s and 90s. This
I think
idea that
yeah.
like this random stranger with the van and the puppies is gonna get you, but most of the time, any terrible act like that is committed by someone that the child knows or is around,
Hmm.
And
almost always.
not only that, they're starting to use that sort of mentality against trans people
Mhm.
specifically when they were using the exact sort of mentality towards, like, queer people in the 80s and 90s,
And they're doing
as
it
part
again with
of
queer people too.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's, like, reverting back as well, right? And it's almost like this weird, um, like, reactionary, but also that satanic panic,
Mhm.
right? Where, like, trans people are the devil or whatever, like, sort of bullshit that they're, like, trying to instill into their followers, and there is, like, that it's not just people who are religious, it's, like, people of all walks of life that,
And liberals included. Liberals
yeah,
are doing this too.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, back in
Oh,
2013, there was, you talked about it. It was the Gamergate movement.
mhm.
Like a
Mhm.
lot of those Reddit atheists had like come out of the woodwork to start criticizing SJWs
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and started getting on that train. And like that goes into your point of um it not just being religious people, because like anyone can get into this mindset and start hating someone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, even now on Twitch, there are people who are quote unquote leftists who also ascribe to like the woke scold mentality. And it's one of the more frustrating things about being in Twitch politics because, Aislene and Aislene is non-binary. I'm a cis woman, right? Like, there's already bullshit that we have to deal with. And anytime um any of us talk about any of the toxicity that's going on, you are risking getting doxxed, you're risking getting swatted. I mean, today or yesterday, Keffels put out a video. Keffels is very very big Twitch streamer, has, a pretty big platform,
Huge
was
platform.
swatted. And, despite her going to the cops and being like, "Hey, listen, there's a very good chance that like someone is gonna SWAT. Can you please put me on a no SWAT list? Because these people know my dead name. They know, my name from when I changed it years ago to my name now. Like, I'm really concerned." And the police just kind of shrugged their shoulders. And then a few days ago, she was swatted.
Yeah.
And like, this isn't just, and it's all from people who she was talking about when she was talking about transphobia on Twitch and on YouTube and just in general. Like, she, I might not agree with her on a majority of, her platform, but at the same time, she is speaking out about the horrific treatment of trans kids in the South and in other places. And she's getting harassed and doxxed and attacked for it. And
I
like,
mean, her life could have ended
yeah,
with that
yeah,
dox
yep,
and swatted. Like, and if that can happen to somebody with a platform like that, it could happen to anybody.
yeah. I know, like, Aislene and I have been on Twitch for 2.5 years almost. And in that time we have seen many trans streamers, trans femme, trans masc, non-binary, being basically bullied off and
Yeah.
Mhm.
forced off. Um, just because the harassment is never ending.
Yeah.
Ends, even for us, and we only get a small taste of it. It has taken us 2.5 years just to moderate our channel enough to where we don't get hate rates.
Yeah.
But it required so much time and energy to get to that point, and other people don't have those tools or don't know how to access them because they're not in the political sphere. Maybe they're in a more gaming related sphere. And so, like, people just like come in and just treat them like dirt. It's awful and very like
And then
disgusting.
we wonder, like, because like a while ago, and like some of these fucking panels were like, oh well, we are having a hard time finding, trans women or trans people to like be on our panels when we talk about trans things. And
They
it's
would
like,
get
yeah,
harassed.
because they're getting harassed off the platform. And if they do speak out about it, some of the bigger streamers will also like get their people to
Mhm.
harass this person off the fucking platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very toxic. And these are from, like, TERFs and gender critical folks aren't just like your white lib feminists or your conservatives. They exist in leftist spaces too. Like,
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times leftists want to be kind of blind to the fact that, like, in your own space you still have bigotry, but it exists. I've wrote about it several times on, the Substack that I have now, and previously on one of our good friends Ben, her stuff. Uh the name of which, the People's Herald. There it goes. It's just like it's a constant battle. And Ben has had to deal with a lot since she's come out because, when she first started Twitch, she was presenting as a guy. And when she came out as, trans, like, she lost money, she lost followers, she started getting harassed way more than she had been when she was presenting as a cis guy. It's just very, very frustrating, to see people, like, constantly in a fight with these folks because they somehow don't fit the binary that you set up in your head,
Yeah.
and it's
Right.
gonna get people hurt and killed. Like, that's where all of this leads. So,
Yeah, exactly. Um yeah, there's there's just so much that uh TERFs do, and like it's not even just TERFs. Like th- there are things that TERFs aid in that, like there's this whole conservative movement right now trying to attack trans people, as well as like using that as a guise to attack gay people again.
Yep. Yep.
um and it's, I don't understand how some TERFs who are gay would like not see that this is hurting everybody. Like I it just doesn't make sense to me, you know?
They're blinded by their own hatred is the only thing I can think, right? Like they're just so blinded by their desperate desire to grasp onto something and hate someone as much as they can because they don't want to focus on anything else, right? And it's just sad. Like it's sad, but it's dangerous. Like I don't feel bad for these folks, but I do feel kind of like, you know, sad in the fact that they really do think that they're helping themselves because you're not. Like nothing
Well,
you're doing is helping yourself. It's only
no,
making things worse for you. Like
and it's like not just that too. It's like this is actually hurting um like children, because
mhm,
there are a lot of trans kids that, have parents that are, reading some of this stuff online and getting like love bombed. That 3-part series on YouTube, like there's a whole almost 2-hour video of like the second part just about how these parents are abusing their children
yep,
because of a few fucking books that were,
yep,
published. And then, they decide to join a Facebook group because they're concerned or whatever. They get love bombed by a bunch of gender critical people. And then they like it is a cult. It, like, becomes a cult, and then we have, a bunch of, like, trans kids that, 1, can't do anything. They can't get out of their situation,
yeah,
and then when they are able to, they're, like, treated like absolute shit by their own goddamn parents.
yeah. Like the overwhelming majority of homeless youth are queer and trans, right? Like the majority of kids that are going to suffer the most are queer and trans kids because of religious abuse, because of physical abuse, sexual abuse, that kind of stuff. Like they get targeted by their own family, by their own parents for being different than the gender binary. And like there are entire Facebook groups dedicated to parents of trans kids who like dead gender their children and refuse to acknowledge their pronouns properly, and who cry and whine about, oh, I always wanted a daughter and now my daughter is calling her herself a boy, and they're just like sobbing into an echo chamber of people who are like, yeah, you're doing it right by, making them understand that, this is just a weird rebellious phase, that's all. And it's like actively leading to children who are, self-harming and doing worse than self-harm because they don't have any support structure. Like you're killing your kids by doing
Yeah.
this. It's not like I'm not being hyperbolic. Like
I mean, there's
you're
kids that have killed themselves.
yeah,
Mhm.
like just these babies who have no help in the world, who see themselves as, trapped in a desperate situation, are are dying, and it's your fault because you refuse to just acknowledge them as their own person and refuse to acknowledge their existence as what they want to be and who they really are versus whatever you've put on them because you think that you own them, you know?
I
And
th-
then
yeah, I
God,
think that's really kind of what it comes down to in that situation. We've gone, I think we've been in this kind of mindset for probably decades, maybe centuries, maybe even longer than that, that like kids are property to their parents.
mhm,
Yeah.
And that can't be further from the truth, because like these are people.
yeah,
Kids are learning in society that um like from their parents that they don't have worth outside of their parents, and that's not true. Like, it's very detrimental to a child's health, like mental health, to believe that their only worth is to be loved by their parents or like useful to their parents. And um it's very saddening, you know.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
deserve better.
Yeah,
Kids
absolutely.
kids all over deserve better. And queer and trans kids, like, having to grow up the way so many of them do, with parents that refuse to acknowledge them for who they are, is just so infuriating, because then those same parents will cry to other people about how their kid wants nothing to do with them as soon as they're legally an adult. And they refuse to acknowledge the fact that they played a hand in it. They send their children to fucking conversion therapy and
Mhm.
to these fucking camps where they're abused physically and sexually by these people wanting to, convert them from their quote evil way of thinking. And it's disgusting that you're willing to put your baby through so much shit because you just refuse to acknowledge that they are their own person and they are able and capable to make their own decisions from a relatively young age. As
Yeah.
soon as parents start losing control, it's like they can't help themselves but dig in. And that's not all parents, but specifically the kind of parents that, like, refuse to acknowledge their children as people and see them only as property. And I speak from experience as someone who grew up in a super evangelical conservative household, that I was never viewed as my own person. I was, just meant to do whatever I was told to. Like, if I talked back to my mom, I was contradicting her. It didn't matter if what I was saying was true or not, right? So, like, if my life was like that, I can only imagine what it was like for queer kids and trans kids who had to grow up in probably very similar situation as myself. And the amount of abuse that they got, probably way worse than anything I did. I didn't have a great childhood. And it's just so frustrating and so anger inducing, because it's like, why would you do this to your own kid? Like, why would you do this to your child? Like, I don't understand your logic. I
It's traumatizing. Like any
Yeah.
sort of, the way you treat your children, like in any sort of, like time as their children, like that comes back. And then, we've got parents like Rhya said that, are like, I don't understand why my kid never talks to me. I did so much. I clothed them, I gave them food, I did blah, blah, blah,
That's
blah, blah.
always my favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
fed
like
them, I clothed them, and I kept a roof over their head. Oh, so you did the bare minimum.
did
Thanks.
the thing you were supposed to. So good on ya. But then you still treated them like they were your property and your investment or your retirement plan or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to send a message to all these parents who were like this, that, like, personally, 2 years ago my dad was dying of cancer, and like it got to a point to where like I wasn't talking to him at all, and I was
Mhm.
just talking to my mom. And even her, it was barely that I was talking to her. And because that our relationship hinged on me being quote unquote normal to them, because they were evangelical and Christian and all that too.
Mhm.
Um like I did not speak to my dad um up until he died. Like I and after that, if people care about that, like I didn't care that he died, you know? Like I don't know. It's complicated
Complicated.
because like when he did die, I had conflicting emotions about it.
Mhm.
I don't mean to trauma dump on you,
No,
but
No, no,
no, no,
no,
no.
you're
It's
fine, you're
it's
fine.
fine. It's fine. I
um
I relate.
yeah, when my dad died, I basically I didn't cry. Like, and I thought
Yeah.
maybe there's something wrong with me, but like I talked to my therapist and she said it's okay not to cry.
Yeah.
Like, I think my emotions haven't really, like, come to a head yet, but, like,
Mm-hmm.
I do know that, um, with all of these emotions, like, none of it is, like, I try not to harbor ill will towards what
Mm-hmm.
my dad did to me, but, like, it's, it still comes through, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, like, I think my only solace in that is that I get to make dead dad jokes, so.
It's so funny because, like, from my personal experience, I've had this conversation with Aislene, because my mom is still alive. I said, but I've told her, like, the kind of relationship I still have with my mother is not great. It's still super abusive, and because of financial situation, like, I still live at home with
Mhm.
the abusive environment. And, like, I told Aislene one time, I was like, I don't think I'll feel sad. I think I'll feel relieved. And and then I feel guilty because, like, you're not supposed to feel that way about a parent. But when a parent is that horrible to you and that, like, disgusting, it's really hard to feel anything but that when they finally, can't hurt you anymore. This week, a book just came out by Jeanette McCurdy that I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to reading. And she named her memoir, I'm Glad My Mom's Dead. And then, like, you're reading the snippets about what the book is about, and it's like, yeah, I fucking get it. Like, I understand. And so many people are just so triggered by the idea that, like, you're supposed to, like, mourn someone, and it's like, no, you don't have to mourn your abusers. You don't have to be sad that they're gone. You can be relieved. You know, you can be glad that you no longer have to deal with that person. Like, this idea of forgiving your abuser is just a way to keep the abuse coming. And I don't agree with the idea, like, because a lot of people are super triggered by this idea of, like, oh my god, she hates her mom even though her mom's dead, like, she should learn to forgive. And it's like,
Fuck you.
you don't
No.
know what she went through. Like, she also doesn't have to forgive the person that abused her. Like, why is it on the onerous of the victim to forgive the abuser and never the abuser to take accountability and to ask forgiveness for what they did? Like,
I think
come
those
on now.
people are projecting, honestly. Like, they
I
want
Yeah.
their abusees to forgive them, but, like, they need to come to terms with their abuse at that
Yeah,
point. Like, you're just, you know, you're just ignoring it at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Like, I heard snippets of that book. Like, someone was reading it, and I felt
Mhm.
that, like, what she felt with her mother. God, I
Yeah.
felt that, you
Yeah,
know.
I've listened to her podcast, which is why I'm very excited to
She
read
has
the
a
book because
podcast?
it's on YouTube. I'd have to look it up.
Please
Cuz you
send that to
can't
me
get.
later.
Yeah, I will. But I was listening to it. She's talked about her eating disorders. She had a really great interview with David Archuleta, who also similar had a similar experience while he was on American Idol. So, like, this thing isn't just confined to, like, your random kid. And I'm just really glad that she was able to have a platform to speak out about that because, yeah, sure, she's a famous star and kid actor and everything, but, like, her story resonates so much with people who suffered similarly but don't have an outlet to express themselves, right? Because, if that was happening to a rich girl from LA who was on a popular Nickelodeon TV show, like, imagine the sort of shit that goes on in private homes across the country with children who don't have any sort of platform. And look at how long it took her after her mom died before she was even able to, like, really come to terms with all of the horrible shit she suffered.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I did the thing where I ADHD.
That's okay. Um, so let's go ahead and finish up with, like, these gender norms that
Uh-huh.
we put ourselves in. Like even being outside what people would say is the norm. I don't really ascribe to these gender norms.
Mhm.
Like I use female pronouns and I describe myself as a woman, but I am very tomboyish.
Mhm.
And yeah, I a lot of TERFs like to say that trans women try to ascribe to those gender norms, like being basically a trad wife and stuff like that. But like, I guess some people try to overcompensate that way. But like, that's also cis women who try to do that. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then like, it's not even true. Like people like me like to just wear whatever's comfortable and like never wear makeup because it burns their eyes or whatever. Um,
I get
um
that so hard.
yeah.
I
But yeah,
mean,
go ahead.
oh, so like being non-binary, I like lately I've been struggling with because I'm very femme presenting,
Mhm.
but I've always felt it like deep in my bones that there was like, both there, right? But I still like girly things. So there's really like points where I'm just like, oh, am I just trying to be like not like other girls in a weird way, right? Because that's like, the idea that is like put into society that, especially with any, person that doesn't fit the binary of like whatever it is, right? And
Mhm.
it's like it's just frustrating because it is like invalidating for, how somebody feels like within themselves, and preferring, certain pronouns over, others, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like so when I was growing up, I was a big into playing with Barbie dolls, but also playing with Hot Wheel cars. Now, see, Hot Wheel cars, that presented quite a dilemma for me, okay? Because like McDonald's would have those months where they would have a boy toy or a girl toy, and the boy toy was a Hot Wheels car, and the girl toy was a mini Barbie. So you can only imagine the stress of being 6 years old and not knowing which one to choose, right? So like there's this weird thing is like so because I played, because one of the things that TERFs do, which is really weird, is gender toys, right?
yeah.
Like, that's one of the weird things that they do, and so I'm just sitting back and I'm like, "Okay, but, like, what would you say to me and the 200 fucking Hot Wheels toys I had as a child?" I like to sit on my, kitchen floor, linoleum, and crash them into each other and make big explosion noises. Was that not feminine enough for you? And at the same time, I really like to play with my Barbie dolls. I mean, I had my nephews, who are the same age as me because my sister is so much older than I am. We would all be in my house and we'd be playing, with the Barbie dolls together. Like, they're straight cis dudes that have children with their wives now. Does that mean that they were, confused as a child? Like, I just don't understand this weird thing that TERFs do by gendering
Oh,
toys and
well,
activities and making something hyper feminine or hyper masculine, and it
well,
can only be these things.
it's like, um it's like, in the 80s and 90s, right? Like, they didn't like, toy manufacturers didn't know what to do with video games, right? They were like, "Oh, do we make these boy toys or girl toys or whatever," right? And, of course, they chose, "No, we're gonna make video games like a boys thing," And now we're at a point where, like, women gamers have to, like, prove themselves, like, there was the whole, like, gamer girl thing and Gamergate, and it's literally because a few executives in the fucking '90s were like, "Yeah, no, we're actually gonna make this boy a boy thing over, like, it being for girls." Like,
And
what the fuck?
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. This is why gender essentialism is just so silly to me. Because in the grand scheme of things, nothing is particularly gendered unless you project gender onto it. Like, it's just like, who cares? For me, I just can't understand the logic of being a TERF because of the simple fact that, like, I'm a go with the flow kind of person and I'm gonna respect you, right? Like, you tell me something and I'll be like, okay, sure, I'm for it. Absolutely. I'm with you. No questions asked. But like TERFs can't do that, and I just don't understand why. Like, if it's not bothering you, why are you so worried about it? Like, trans women and trans men existing isn't hurting you as a person. Like, you're still a woman. It's fine. You know?
Yeah, there was a thing that happened a little while ago. A bunch of people got super mad that Harry Styles wore a
Wore a
dress.
dress.
It was very odd that they were
Yeah.
so upset about that. Cause like why does it matter that like a person is outside of those gender norms? Like I thought the whole point was that you could express yourself, but now like a man can't dress that way, you know?
Like, he's
Um
still called, and I think what really bothered them is that he's like still, as far as the world knows, he's a cis straight dude, and they just can't fathom a cis straight dude wearing a dress, and it's like, why not? Like,
I mean, kilts exist.
kilts exist.
and that's the thing, like I there's a clear contradiction with the logic here. Like they tell trans women you can just be a boy um who dresses like feminine or something like that. And
And then
then
attack a cis guy for dressing quote feminine.
yeah, it's like Two-Face pretty much. Like those
Mhm.
Two-Face girls that you know in high school who will tell you one thing and then get upset over the exact opposite of what they said they
Yeah.
believed. Like it's exhausting sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess in the grand scheme of things, since we have been talking about the logic of TERFs, is there is none. Like,
Gender
that's
is
my
stupid. Why are we doing this?
Because
uh,
society.
Mhm.
society.
People are stuck in their ways and they don't want to
True.
leave it.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, and, like, in the grant like and gender shit is, like, literally Nazi shit. Like, it's Nazi shit. And,
My
like, ugh.
The weirdest thing to me is, like, the Gen X women who think that, like, David Bowie and Prince were hot when they're, like, specifically crafted, like, as non-binary perception, right? Like, David Bowie was someone who was both masculine and feminine. Prince was both masculine and feminine and just, like, very ostentatious and did what they wanted. They didn't give a fuck. And for some reason, those same people who grew up thinking that David Bowie was the hottest man alive are just like, "Oh my god, trans people. What is wrong with you? How can you believe that? And that you grew up in the 80s?" It's like, come on. Have
I
you seen what the 80s looked like?
Glam rock was a thing.
I do want to go back to what you said before about the gender being Nazi shit. Can you
Yeah.
explain what you meant?
Oh, yeah, like, um, the reason why, like, the color pink is, like, considered a girl color, right, is because and at one point, pink was, like, considered, like, a very masculine color,
Right.
right? Like, before the 1940s, like, they would put, um like pink on little boys, right? The reason why that changed was because the Nazis put like pink triangles on gay people in the concentration camps. And that's how pink became like a girl color. And it's like that's just like one example, but I mean, when we were talking about um like the physical aspects, like the eugenics side of it, the phrenology, the like bone structure, like that's all like Nazi shit. It really, in the deep roots of it, it's like fascist. It's part of like the fascist train, or like, the all-encompassing of, putting everybody in like these very tight boxes to, feed the narrative of like what is quote unquote normal.
Right. Yeah, I did not know that about the colors flipping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Um yeah, I really appreciate you two coming on. Um why don't you two go ahead and shout yourselves out for the
Okay.
podcast?
Okay. Well, you can catch us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Feminist Critique. Our Twitter account is at Feminist Crit. My personal account is FemCrit Rhya, FemCritrHya.
My
And
Twitter account is Peggers Cove because I live in Nova Scotia. And I don't really have anything else, but
I think
Rhya does have a Substack that you
I
should go and check
do.
out.
It's how does it? I think it's rhya.substack.com. So that should be it. But if you go to my my Twitter, it has my link tree with like all of my stuff. So
Oh, and we're also mods for Bleep Blomp Ben. So you should check her out as well, because we love Ben.
yeah, she's
Aw.
a sweetie.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate you two coming on.
Yeah, no problem. This is great. I really appreciate you asking.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider clicking like and subscribe. Also, if you have any thoughts of your own, write them down in the comments and let yourself be heard. Thanks again, and see you next Monday.